The Galactic Council had never seen anything quite like humanity before. When the first human diplomatic vessel arrived at the Nexus Station 3 years ago, the assembled representatives of 47 species had watched with barely concealed amusement. These bipedal mammals from a backwater system called Sol had somehow stumbled upon faster-than-light travel, but their technology was crude, their ships ugly, and their diplomatic protocols laughably simple. Ambassador Zekthara of the hegemony had been particularly dismissive. His species had ruled the eastern spiral arm for millennia, their crystalline forms pulsing with condescending light as they addressed the human delegation. "Your species shows promise," he had declared, his voice resonating through the chamber's translation matrix. "Accept protectorate status under the hegemony, and we shall guide you to civilization." The human ambassador, a middle-aged woman named Sarah Chen, had smiled politely and requested time to consider the offer. The council had granted it, certain that humanity would return within a cycle, grateful for the generous terms of subjugation. They had been wrong. Now 3 years later, Fleet Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the UHSF Defiance, watching as the combined forces of humanity's enemies gathered at the edge of the Kepler disputed zone. 7 major powers had united against the upstart humans: the hegemony, the Void Seekers, the Mechanist Collective, and 4 others who had grown tired of humanity's refusal to know their place. "Sir," reported Commander Lisa Park from the tactical station, "long-range sensors detect approximately 12,000 enemy vessels. They're maintaining formation at the border waiting." Webb nodded grimly. The alien coalition had drawn a line in space itself, claiming the rich systems humanity had been colonizing and terraforming. Their message had been simple: withdraw to the Sol system and accept limitations or face annihilation. They expected humanity to beg, to negotiate, to compromise. They had never encountered a species that responded to ultimatums by sharpening their knives. "Fleet composition, Commander?" 2,400 human defense force vessels, sir. We're outnumbered 5 to 1. "Acceptable odds," Webb replied, earning surprised glances from his bridge crew. "Signal all ships. Begin Operation Manifest Destiny." The human fleet began to move, not in the organized formations favored by the alien powers, but in loose, chaotic clusters that seemed almost random. The enemy commanders watched with confusion as human vessels scattered across a 3-dimensional front spanning several light minutes. Admiral Zekthara, now commanding the coalition fleet from his flagship Eternal Dominance, pulsed with satisfied brightness. "The mammals panic already. They scatter like prey animals. All forces advance and—" His words died as space around his fleet erupted in controlled chaos. The human vessels hadn't scattered randomly at all. Each cluster had been precisely positioned to exploit gaps in the enemy formation that the aliens hadn't even known existed. Humanity's crude, ugly ships unleashed weapons that defied conventional tactical doctrine. Kinetic penetrators that struck with the force of asteroids, directed energy beams that could slice through 3 ships at once, and, most terrifyingly, swarms of autonomous drones that seemed to think and adapt independently. But it wasn't the weapons that shocked the coalition forces. It was the strategy. Where alien military doctrine favored preservation of force and calculated exchanges, humans fought like madmen. They rammed damaged vessels into enemy formations rather than retreat. They detonated their own ships to clear fields of fire for their allies. When the human cruiser Gettysburg found itself surrounded by 6 enemy vessels, its captain didn't surrender or request terms. He overloaded the ship's reactor and took all 6 with him. These creatures are insane. Transmitted high command forth of the Void Seekers as another human vessel exploded, taking out a significant portion of his battle line. They fight without regard for their own survival. Admiral Zekthara's crystalline form flickered with uncertainty. "Fall back to defensive formation. We must reassess." "No," came a calm human voice across all frequencies. Admiral Webb's image appeared on screens throughout both fleets. "You drew lines in space and told us to respect them. You demanded we beg for the right to exist among the stars. You made one critical error." The human admiral's expression was carved from stone. "You assumed we would fight your kind of war." As if summoned by his words, reality tore open behind the coalition fleet. Humanity's newest achievement, prototype jump gates, materialized like wounds in space-time. Through them poured the 2nd and 3rd human defense fleets, forces the aliens hadn't known existed. The trap was perfect. The coalition found itself caught between three human fleets, their superior numbers suddenly meaningless as human tactics turned the battle into a three-dimensional nightmare of crossfires and crushing vectors. But even as their fleets burned, the alien commanders couldn't comprehend what they were witnessing. Humans didn't just fight to win, they fought to rewrite the rules. Every engagement became a lesson in applied violence that the galaxy had never seen before. When the Mechanist Collective's dreadnought Prime Logic attempted to withdraw, the human destroyer Normandy didn't just pursue, it calculated the optimal ramming vector and drove itself like a spear through the massive vessel's command section. When hegemony cruisers tried to use their energy shields as protection, human weapons didn't try to penetrate them. They overloaded them with so much kinetic force that the shields became weapons against their own ships. The battle lasted 6 hours. When the smoke cleared, the combined alien fleet had been reduced to debris and fleeing survivors. Of the human forces, barely 800 ships remained operational, but they held the field. Admiral Webb opened a channel to the retreating aliens. "You wanted to redraw borders," he said simply. "Congratulations. The new border is wherever we decide to stop." 3 months later, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood once again before the Galactic Council, but this time the chamber was noticeably emptier. 7 major powers had been reduced to regional influences. Their fleets scattered, their territories claimed by human colonists who didn't ask permission. "The Council recognizes the new realities of galactic politics," intoned the Council President, a avian creature whose feathers rustled with nervous energy. "Perhaps we can discuss mutually beneficial arrangements." "No," Chen interrupted politely. "You had your chance for arrangements 3 years ago. Now you have something else entirely." She gestured to the holographic display behind her, showing the new galactic map. Human territory had expanded by 300%, incorporating the richest systems in the local cluster. "You have neighbors," she continued. "We suggest you learn to be good ones." As the human delegation departed, the remaining council members sat in stunned silence. They had expected begging, negotiation, compromise. Instead, humanity had introduced them to a concept their civilizations had never encountered: manifest destiny backed by applied ultraviolence. The borders had indeed been redrawn, and somewhere in the expanding sphere of human space, colonies were already being established. Children were being born under alien suns, and Earth's most dangerous predators were learning to call the galaxy home. They had wanted humanity to beg. They got humanity unleashed instead.